Hello, I am Orwell McGovern here for Right Aligned, and today we are talking to Emma Redfern. Hi, Emma.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really good. Excited to be here today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be chatting to you. So, just to kick us off to get us started, do you want to tell us a bit about your career, your journey, your life? Um, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. Where do I even begin? But yeah, I'm Emma Redfern. I am the founder of a business called Studio Selfmade, which is an online community and personal branding studio that helps creatives, founders, and freelancers start their careers and build careers in a fulfilling way without sacrificing their mental health. So I started my first business about 5 years ago now while I was still a student at university. So I studied fashion design, really enjoyed being creative. But when it came to wanting to go into industry, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to take an unpaid internship to try and get experience because of the challenges it can bring around mental health. So I have anxiety. And I didn't want to move away to a really big city and try and work and kind of figure out what was going on there. So instead of doing that, I decided to start a business. And my first business was called The Calming Club. And it was an anxiety self-care business where I designed products to help people like myself that suffered with anxiety and panic attacks. And over the years of being at university and through my final year, which was during lockdown, I grew a business which helped people look after their mental health and use that when I graduated to go self-employed as a freelance designer, but also carrying on growing the business as well. And that's what led me to starting Studio Self-Made, seeing the gap in the market of helping people that leave uni and not really knowing what to do next, or early career creatives that are really stuck and unsure about their kind of next steps in their journey. And I wanted to create something that would help guide them through that process. So they didn't have to feel as alone as I did when I graduated. And I know so many other people did as well. So yeah, that's kind of the story behind why I started Studio Self-Made. And it's 2 years old now, 2 years old last month. So
Oh, wow.
still going strong. And yeah, it's excited to see where it goes next as well.
Yeah, massive congratulations on reaching the 2 years.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, I love the way you're talking about this because one of the things behind Right Aligned is exactly that education, design education or formal education doesn't actually prepare you for the real world. It lags behind the real world in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons we do this is to actually talk to people like you who then give these kind of insights to be like, okay, well, actually, this is my story. This is where I'm at to show that
Yeah.
everyone is in kind of the same boat. So
Yeah.
how did you in that kind of anxiety moment, um, how did you get the drive to actually start doing the business to actually help people that were in a similar situation?
Yeah, I was really lucky. So at my university, they offered an entrepreneurship year. So you could do like a work for yourself year, which was amazing. So I got a small amount of funding to kind of just test out a business idea. And
Amazing.
initially I went into that year thinking I'd be a freelance illustrator because I'd always loved like fashion illustration. And I'd had a little side business of doing like bridal illustrations on the side while I was in my first 2 years at uni. But one of the days I had a panic attack and I was out and about and I was thinking, this is just so difficult. There's no resources out there that can help people. Waiting lists are so long for support. So, is there something I could do to kind of bring my creative skills into something that would help people who are struggling? So, I started off designing a product for me that could help me initially. And from there, it kind of grew into a business. But taking that first step was really just like, let's just see what happens and give it a go. And if it completely fails, it fails. But I was lucky that I did it in that environment of kind of being still a student and having that support of still having student finance, which is amazing, and kind of being able to test out that idea. But I think sometimes you just got to take the leap. And I was like, if I'm going to use this placement year and I haven't gone into industry like everybody else has, I need to make sure I'm building experience that will help me when I graduate.
Hmm.
So it was really just like, okay, I need to test this out in the real world and put the ideas out there. So after a couple of months of designing the products, I put it out there and started to get sales in. And I was like, okay, this is something that could actually be turned into a business idea and something that could work. But it was only by actually putting it out into the world that I realized that it could actually happen. So yeah, it definitely took a lot of kind of just pushing myself and feeling
Hmm.
that fear of doing it anyway. But I'm so glad that I did it now because I wouldn't have ended up here if I hadn't have done that.
Yeah, for sure. So could you tell us a bit about like how you got your first client? Because obviously,
So
like working on something for a lot
yeah.
of months, I think a lot of people can relate to that, where you're like have it in it's your own little baby, but like getting out into the world can be a bit of a challenge. So yeah, how did
Yeah, of course. So, in terms of what I did with the Calming Club, I kind of made sure that I was building in public. So, I was
ah,
posting on social media, I was networking, and like not loads because like having anxiety, putting yourself out there isn't the easiest thing in the world.
hmm,
But yeah, I was speaking to people, I was putting myself out there for different competitions and things like that. And through that, I was discovered by my first kind of client that took me on after university. And they wanted to take me on to to do a brand design for them. So to redesign their branding for one of their brands and to start a new brand. And from there, that role kind of like evolved into taking over some of their marketing and their brand strategy as well. But I met them through doing a competition and putting the Calming Club out there in the world. And they saw what I did for that business and they wanted me to do it for theirs.
hmm,
So it was really through like a passion project that turned into a business that I was able to then get my first client. So yeah, I always recommend people building in public, posting on social media, even if it's rubbish to begin with. I think putting yourself out there is one of the best things that you can do. So yeah, and I never expected it to lead to that either. It wasn't like a planned step by step. It just so happened that those connections formed off the back of that. But yeah, that's how I got that first client initially.
hmm. So I love having these kind of hearing these stories of okay, yeah, like you say, building in public, putting stuff out,
Yeah.
even if it's rubbish, whatever. Do you think that can work for absolutely everybody? Because if we think of like all the different people that are coming out of university, or the people that are trying to start, even if we just take the fraction that go freelance, if
Yeah.
everyone does that, is everyone focused on, it's just a sea of people doing this kind of the same kind of thing? Is there more to it than just because it's not just about putting your stuff out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the beginning it was because I had no idea what I was doing. So I was just figuring it out as I was going along.
Hmm.
But that's one of the reasons why I started Studio Self-Made. And that's why it's founded in personal branding. And when I look at personal branding, and I know it's a buzzword that everyone hears all the time, it's like, okay, I need to talk about my work and I need to say that I'm a graphic designer or I'm a videographer or whatever it is. But I look at personal branding on a much deeper level than that. So kind of look at it holistically as like what makes up you, what are you passionate about, what do you want to see changed in the world, and kind of the skills that you bring as well. So initially for me, that was talking about mental health and then that creative side, which then led me to working with wellness brands and designing their branding for them because they felt very aligned to the mission that I was on with the Calming Club and they could see that with me. So I would always, when you're starting to post your work, think about what is it you're actually passionate about? Like, is there a cause that you're working towards? Is it something you talk about with your friends all the time? It doesn't just have to be sharing your bad work or your kind of draft work behind the scenes, because like you said, it'll be a sea of everybody doing that. It's like, what makes you unique? Like, do you have a unique life experience that you've gone through? Or is there something, like I said, that you're passionate about that you could bring into the conversation? I think people connect with people and humans. So if you can bring that human experience, the amount of people I've had message me saying, I have anxiety too, I have imposter syndrome too. Like, is there any way that you could help me with this? Or I want to get this started. So it's those points of connection that are super important when it comes to personal branding. So I think in the beginning, you are probably messy and you kind of just start posting anything, but thinking about that personal branding on a deeper level can really help you get started and find clients or employers as well.
Hmm. Do you think what are the elements that are outside? So I always think of these platforms, it's easy to get wrapped up in them. So like I stopped posting on Instagram 2 years ago because I could
Yeah.
see how much of my life it was taking up and actually
Mm.
how unhappy it was making me because I was spending so much time in comparison. So what are the ways that you have tried or that you speak with other people about to get out of social media and actually make connections in the real world or do things that are outside of just going onto one of these platforms and making lots of money for some faceless corporation?
Yeah. So for me, having like a business background and kind of wanting to grow my business, I've done quite a lot of different like social impact accelerators or business accelerators, but
Hmm.
there are things out there for freelancers as well. But yeah, so I've gone on different ones with like NatWest, Virgin Money, Santander. So they all run different business startups. So even if you're interested in kind of getting started or building your own agency, then they're a really great way to kind of meet other founders and meet other people that are working in this space and kind of connect with different people as well. So getting getting out there to different events. I mean, I'm based in Sheffield in the UK, so not a major city at all, but there is still ways to meet local freelancers and creatives, looking for different events on Eventbrite and things like that. And just finding different ways to get out there. I'm very lucky that I work from like a co-working space where there's also other business owners and freelancers there as well. So I try and mix up working remotely and working in person when I can to try and just broaden those networks. But for me, it has been those kind of business accelerators and the competitions that I've been a part of or applied for that have connected me with different people as well, that have then led on to more client work or more connections. And I know we were speaking about this the other day on LinkedIn about how when you make different connections with people, it might not always be that they're your clients, but it could be people that they introduce you to as well. So yeah, I definitely think even if you are an anxious introvert or you want to stay at home, it's getting out there into the real world and going to different events that can really help you build that real world connection as well. Because it is easy to hide behind online platforms, but yeah, turning them into real life connections is really important too.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I think because I always prefer that as a focus. I see lots of
Yeah.
people online who are having these who are talking about courses, and it's like they're on LinkedIn selling courses about how to make money on LinkedIn. And it's like,
Yeah.
this is the most meta weird thing that it's like, it's so far from what being a human should be.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, what the foundation is, they're like, talk to people. That's what they're
Yes.
actually
Yeah.
saying, right? Like, talk to people.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. Folk just need a little push in that direction. But that's basically the foundation of it, isn't it? That's what you're saying in all these different ways.
Yeah, definitely. I
It's
think
the
it's being
foundation.
able to communicate across different platforms as well. Like you said, being able to communicate on online platforms because yes, we can drop some of them, but you probably, especially when you're getting started and you don't have any network, it is good to be active on them, but it's making sure that you're authentic across all the platforms. Like you said, you're not trying to be somebody else on LinkedIn and then in real life you're just like, oh yeah, that's not me. It doesn't feel authentic to me because people will see right through that when they meet you as well. So I think it's really important to stay true to you and find those platforms that you enjoy being on. If Instagram isn't for you, like it's not for me. I don't enjoy that platform. I feel like it is a very, very frustrating platform to be on. Whereas with LinkedIn, I feel like there's a lot more of a community. People actually engage with your content, and it feels like I've made so many genuine connections. Like we connected through LinkedIn,
Yeah.
so I feel like it is a great platform to be on, but it's finding the one that works for you and you actually enjoy being on as well. Otherwise, you do just get stuck in that comparison trap and end up hating your time on there. So yeah, it's like a mixture of both and kind of getting out in person when you can as well.
For sure. So it sounds like, so obviously the anxiety stuff's really tough, and I've dealt with it, that kind of stuff
Mm,
myself. But it sounds like as the business side of things has been pretty smooth sailing for you. Is that the case, or has there been like any big
mm.
hiccups, big
Yeah.
failures, big mistakes that have like, yeah, that would be useful to share the lessons that you got from it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think when you think about business and like running a business over the last 5 years, there's definitely been challenges and things that I've gone through. I suppose pivoting away from the Calming Club. So I still run the Calming Club, but it's more of like a side hustle now.
Mm,
That did really well during COVID. I'd set it up just before COVID, and then obviously everything went into lockdown. And that was great for a few years, but I suddenly realized I was like, if I want to sustain myself off this in the long run, this is much more of a seasonal business where you're going to have peaks around Christmas or in like Q4 of the year, rather than an all year round kind of business. And I also wanted something that was a little bit more challenging and entertaining for me. I love working on different projects and kind of working with other people as well, rather than just working on a business on my own.
yeah.
So deciding to kind of change direction and figure out what I wanted to do next was difficult. But that's when I came up with the idea for Studio Selfmade and kind of tested that out. And yeah, there's so many setbacks that you go through when you run a business, like getting rejected for grant funding or kind of not making the sales that you want to, or getting rejected from clients. So there's definitely like a wealth of things that you go through when you run a business. Most days it does feel like you're kind of always striving for the next thing. So I think it's really important to stop and actually reflect on how far you've come. Like being like graduating 3 years ago and still running a business and kind of building it in the way I have, I think sometimes I have to realize the achievements that I've gone through as well, even though I'm striving for more things as well. So like you said, I think it's not comparing yourself to what you see online and seeing what other people are doing because it's not always an accurate representation of how well they're doing. They'll
Mm,
always put out the best of themselves as well. So yeah, I think that's one big lesson. It's not getting stuck in that comparison trap and focusing on what you find is really important, has been one of the main lessons for me.
Hmm. Um, Tell us a bit more about the grant funding. This has never been
Mm.
something that I've even considered. Like all my when I've worked, it's like I have clients, and clients pay me, and I do
Yeah,
work. Um, when I used to I was a creative director of a social agency for a while, and
yeah.
we would write other people's applications, but that was like third sector looking for funding for one thing or another. So what is it you've written grant funding around for yourself?
So a lot of the funding that I applied for was kind of targeted towards young change makers. So there's a lot of funding out there for kind of under 30s that are helping people that have got social impact focused businesses.
Yeah.
So with Studio Selfmade, I was really passionate about helping people that didn't automatically kind of enter into the creative industry. So for example, if they live outside of major cities, if there's barriers for them to face going to do unpaid internships, or they don't necessarily have family connections that get them into the industry.
Yeah.
Um, and things like it's the fact that it's reported that only 16% of people in the creative industries are from working class backgrounds. And they're obviously more neurodiverse as well. You find that
What
quite
was the
often.
percentage? 60 or 16?
16, yeah, 16, which is crazy.
That
Yeah, so
can't be
it's
true.
tiny. Yes. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's
it's
wild.
crazy. Yeah, so I think that for me and kind of seeing those barriers, especially when I was at uni around, especially in the fashion industry, around
Oh
it
yeah,
being
yeah.
expected that it's unpaid, you move to London, working 40 hours a week for like 6 months. It's like, how is that possible for anybody that doesn't come from a privileged position or has family connections and things like that? So
Hmm.
I was always passionate about challenging that within the industry. So that is the what led me to start Studio Self-Made and what inspired me to apply for grant funding. And a lot of the time I started with an idea and I just applied for different things that came my way. The first one that I got was through Virgin Money, and they offered a 6 month mentoring program. And I also got access to funding to travel as well and go and research in different countries and be a part of a cohort of other people starting social impact businesses as well. So that was like my first taste of grant funding and kind of seeing the impact it could have on just developing an idea. And then from there, I applied for lots more competitions, which involves pitching and putting yourself out there, which is definitely new to me and not something that comes naturally. But I was really passionate about the cause that I was working on. So that I think helped me kind of win the grant funding. And over the last couple of years, I've got over £65,000 of grant funding for the business. So that's really helped me kind of grow and develop it. I've got a small team of freelancers that work with me now. And yeah, develop that idea further. But it's amazing that these companies out there that fund people that are just getting started, because
Hmm.
without that, I don't know where I would be. It probably would look very different and have to be doing lots of other projects on the side to fund it, especially when you're developing an idea like this. So yeah, grant funding was something that I didn't plan to apply for, but when I
Hmm.
discovered it, I then just it found that it unlocked so many more doors for me as well. So yeah, I definitely recommend people looking into it if there is a social impact business idea that they want to develop or they're interested in that space.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I wish I'd have had this conversation 15 years ago. Because like most of the people that I worked with through my 20s were like charities, social enterprises, that
Yeah,
kind of thing. So I was always working, not always, with those kind of clients. Maybe they don't have that big a budget. But
yeah,
yeah, having 65K to sit on while I grow it, absolutely correct.
yeah,
It would have enabled a lot more stuff a lot faster.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a
definitely.
super interesting way of going about it. It's not something like I say, I'd ever thought of before.
Yeah, I was really lucky. I just got an Instagram advert actually for the first one that I found. So Instagram can be good for some things. But yeah, that's how I discovered that first opportunity. Literally wrote the application in a day, sent it off, and yeah, kind of got through that first opportunity. It isn't always that easy. Like I said, you get a lot of rejections when you go for grant funding, so it's not
Hmm.
guaranteed kind of money, but that's also a side of things that helped me learn about personal branding and storytelling, because a lot of grant funding applications require you to talk about the mission that you're on and get people to buy into what you're doing as well. So that storytelling aspect can work across everything that you do within running a business. So yeah, it was really kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities that could come if you could actually get people to buy into your mission as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a skill that's definitely helped me along my journey.
Nice. So something that so obviously I was checked you out what you do. We've had these conversations before, and it's like I really admired what you're doing. Um, how does it feel to be somebody who's so not long out of university, but he's then turning around and like coaching and mentoring the people, other people. Um,
Yeah.
what the kind of topics does you cover? Like, what is it that they come to you for?
So when it comes to mentoring, and like I completely get the perspectives like, oh, you've not been out of uni long, like how are you a mentor? And I think one of the things that I do when I approach mentoring is think about how I'm taking them from like A to B. I'm not taking them to A to Z. So I am kind of a few
Yeah,
years out of uni, I've literally just gone through the experience that they have. I can understand the challenges of what they're dealing with right now because I'm so close to that experience as well.
yeah,
And a lot of the work that I do is often, and I think we've spoken about this before, is people come to you thinking, oh, how do I want to get clients? How do I find my first client? And
yeah,
often you have to take that step back and go, actually, it's mindset and it's the imposter syndrome or the self-doubt or the confidence that they haven't got to take that first step. So my experience with running the Calming Club and all the mindset work that I did around that and my own journey with having anxiety for 14 years now, I'm able to use a lot of that to help me with that experience. But I also bring in that practical side of the business strategy side, which I think a lot
yeah.
of creatives lack.
Hmm. For
In terms
sure.
of, like you said, like, yeah, you don't get taught it at university, you don't get taught it at school. How do you actually turn your creative skill into something you can get paid for? So looking for opportunities, especially with freelancers and people starting businesses, of like, how do you actually position yourself to clients that you solve a problem and they want to work with you? So a lot of the work that I do is around mindset and then also bringing in some of those business and like marketing skills into being a creative. So I very much approach it from a beginner perspective. Like I work with people that are out of uni or still during their kind of education, and helping them on those next steps, but not trying to say that I'm going to help them kind of build a 40-year long career. I'm helping them with that first initial step or the first
Mm.
few years. And I feel like creative careers evolve as you go along as well. So it's kind of that process, but building those foundations around mindset and kind of those business skills, I think that will last you throughout your whole career. So yeah, just starting with those basics really and kind of meeting people where they're at is kind of how I approach my mentoring
Mm.
offer. Yeah.
No, I absolutely love that. Like one of the things that I was taught in college was our tutor loved to tell stories. And he said about how in one of his first jobs, he worked in a supermarket, and it's like he'd just learned to drive, and he'd been driving like 6 months, maybe 9 months. And then this guy in his 40s or his 50s was saying how he had more experience than my tutor as the young guy. And it's like apparently this old guy, all he ever did was he'd drive from his home to his work, from his work to his home, to the supermarket and
Yeah.
back. Whereas my tutor was like, yeah, so we were out driving at night, driving in the rain, driving too fast, driving
Yeah.
in the snow. And it's like in 9 months, he'd like, driven across Scotland, and he'd been to the islands, and he'd done all this stuff. And it's like, so he's more experienced because he's older, or am I more experienced because I'm actually out here
Yeah.
doing all this stuff and experiencing it and seeing the positives and negatives and working through problems? Oh
Yes.
yeah, I definitely think I love how you answer that question, because it's not about years in the game, is it? It's about who can I help? How can I help them? What is it I have to offer them?
Yeah, I always love the quote, be a guide, not a guru, and kind of
I like that.
around like not having to be like an expert in everything before you even start, and just
Mm,
actually just being that guide on that journey. Because like no one likes being preached at, no one likes being told how to do everything when it feels like they're feeling so overwhelmed. So it's just being that guide on that journey with them. And that's how I approach the mentoring is like I'm just going to be that accountability partner. We can talk through problems and we can work through them on that journey because yeah, if you are coming from a place where you're so experienced that you've almost forgotten what it's like to be at the beginning of that journey, it's going to be really hard to take on board that advice because it's not relevant to you where you're at. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's how I kind of approach it. But yeah, I think it's so important to meet people where they're at and kind of where they're starting from. So,
Mm.
but yeah, hearing from loads of different creatives as well is great to learn about their different approaches, and that's why I love doing things like this because you can hear about how different people mentor and bring their ideas to the table. So yeah, I think a mentor is a great thing to have, especially when you're starting out as well.
Yeah, I would agree. At any point, somebody who can, even if it's just bouncing ideas off. I always
Yeah.
thought of it as like it's like therapy. It's like when I
Yes.
therapy gives you the tools to deal with situations that you find yourself in. It takes a
Yeah.
while to like learn them and to work through the challenges that you're having and all that kind of stuff to allow yourself to use the tools. But then as soon as you have them, like you say, you don't need to be teach someone for 4 years. But when you have those tools and you can start to apply them, then you have fewer and fewer questions for the person that you're working with. So yeah, it's a great thing. Um, so what kind of projects are you working on at the minute?
So I'm developing Studio Self-Made at the moment with my team of freelancers that have just started with me over the summer. So we're working on an exciting project, which is in the works. But it's mainly around kind of the mentoring offer that I've done at the moment. And I've been working on this for the last year. That's been very much one-to-one, that one-to-one support with creatives at different stages of their journey. And a lot of the feedback that I've got from them is all around they don't want courses, they want accountability and they want that community. So it's developing something that brings that together where they can get the knowledge, but they can also connect with other creatives as well.
Hmm.
So I know that, I mean, I've experienced this myself, and that's one of the reasons why I try and meet as many people as possible, is being a creative is really lonely and can be lonely sometimes.
Mhm.
So I'm working on an offer that brings together that group element of mentoring, but also helps them learn on that journey as well and build some of those foundational elements of personal branding, mindset, and kind of getting them started. So that should hopefully be launching in the next couple of months. And it's great to have so many other young creatives that I've been working with, bouncing ideas off them. I'm really passionate about creating opportunities for young people, especially getting started, or any early career creators at any stage of their journey. If people have changed their career and they want to start getting into something like this. So it's been amazing to work with them. And then also developing my personal branding offer. So I work with founders and freelancers that may be a little bit later stage if they're wanting to build a personal brand to get clients or build their businesses. So working with them through platforms like LinkedIn, but in a way that builds a personal brand that's really authentic to them,
Hmm.
and feels really genuine. That's kind of at the heart of what I do. It's got to feel like it connects more than just their skills. It's got to feel like it connects what they want to have an impact on and their values as well. So yeah, that's really exciting. So working on a few different things in the works, but yeah, very excited for next year to see what happens next.
Nice. Do you believe that having a personal brand is essential for any designer now? Because it seems like a lot of effort. I just want to show up, right? I want to work with people I want to
Yes.
design. So is what is having a personal, does everybody have to have one? Because again, it's like the thing we were talking
Mhm.
about social media. If everyone's just out there posting stuff, everyone's focused on building their personal brand, like
Yeah.
it seems a bit superfluous to actually doing the work.
Yeah, so I'd say everyone has a personal brand, whether you like it or not. The way you show
Okay.
up in a room or kind of the way you show up online, you
Yeah, yeah.
have one. So it's depending on how much you want to invest time into it is completely up to you.
Hmm.
Depending on your career path and what cards you've been dealt in terms of your privilege, your connections, it's completely up to you. If you've not got any connections in the industry, if you're literally starting from scratch and you're like really trying to build it up, I do think it's a great place to invest time into, especially in the beginning, because it can often do the work for you behind the scenes. Like I'll get clients come to me from posts that I posted months ago that they would never have heard about me if I'd never done that. So I think it can be really powerful. And yes, you shouldn't just be posting like everyone needs to build a personal brand. Like I've done it, you need to do it too.
Yeah.
It should be aligned to your business or your creative career path. So if you're a graphic designer, talk about the designers you're inspired by, talk about the work that you've created, talk about the things that you're passionate about in your own personal time.
Hmm.
Um, and do it in a way that's fun and you make connections. It doesn't have to be something that's like, oh, I have to show up every single day on LinkedIn, for example. If that doesn't feel like you, choose your platform and show up where you need to, or show up in real life by talking at events. But I do feel like it does open doors and it has opened quite a lot of doors for me. So it will be something I always advocate for. But if it doesn't feel like you, then that's absolutely fine. But just know that you have one, you have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. So if you invest
Hmm.
that time into it, you will probably find benefits from that as well.
Yeah, so I guess I mean that's what I say to client businesses and stuff
Yeah.
that I work with. It's like, well, you have a brand, whether you want it or not. It's like either
Yeah.
you can control it or you don't. But I guess it's also outside of the social side because that's something I always seem to have a problem with. The social media side. It's
Mm,
like following up with clients. It's part of your personal brand, right?
yeah.
Like how you if you do any like aftercare when you've finished a project. It's like
Yeah.
there's so many like small elements of just how you do your job that used to just be called service, which is now
Yeah.
rebranded as into this personal brand idea.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like it will probably change its name 100 times, like during our lifetime, like the new word that's in.
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel like personal branding at the moment is something that people recognize, and I also don't want it to be like, oh, personal brand. It's so like it's just for influencers, or it's just for big creators, because like I said, everybody has one.
Mm,
But I think it's yeah, it's just understanding how you show up, especially if you are the
yeah.
face of what you do as a freelancer. You will need to look at those elements of how you deliver the services that you do. Like you said, it's not just about what you post online. It's that start to finish experience with somebody. It's how they show up in their messages, how they speak when they speak to you on Zoom. It's how they speak to you when they're working with you, and then after the project, how they follow up. So it does expand across everything, and your personal brand could then get you recommended to other people. If you've delivered an amazing experience, you're
Mhm.
more likely going to get referrals. So I do think it is really powerful. And like you said, you can invest in the areas that you want to. If social media is not for you, do it in person, like, and do it in wherever you feel comfortable. But yeah, I do think it is something that most creatives do need these days. But yeah, it's finding a way that works for you.
Mm. Yeah, that's cool. Because obviously, if you think when you talk about or talk to clients about marketing, the first thing they jump to is, all right, we need to do some postings on social. And it's
Yeah,
like if they forget the all the stuff that comes before that of the,
yeah,
okay, where are we coming from? Who are you? Who you want to communicate? All that kind of thing. Then you actually found so many different avenues to
yeah.
promote yourself. So it's like if people are thinking of personal branding and like with myself, it's like, oh yeah, it's influencers and it's this and it's that. Well, no, there's so many more elements to it. If you actually get beyond that first thought and just actually look into it, then yeah, there's loads of ways that you can apply it into your own life and business.
Yeah, it's I love that strategy side of things. Like that's definitely my happy place. So that work that you do beforehand before you dive into just posting about your work, I think it can really tell so much about you. So like one of the tools I use is called Ikigai, which is a Japanese framework that helps you find like your purpose.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. And I think that answering those questions is a really great starting point for where you want to go. And it can help you write content that people actually want to read.
Mm,
There's literally no point just posting about your work because people will want to read it. Some people will, like your the friends and family might want to see it, but people beyond that will want to see why you do what you do. So I do think it's important not to skip that step and kind of think about what you want to share before you do it. But
yeah.
yeah, I think it can be really powerful and it can teach you so much about yourself as well. So yeah, I recommend it.
Nice. That's Marie Kondo, right? Ikigai. She uses that.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Nice. Well, this has been absolutely lovely. Just before we finish up, how do you stay happy in your work?
That's a really good question. I think speaking to other people, I'm very much a person that likes to bounce ideas off others. So finding ways to find that connection, whether that's online or in person, is really important to me. I think I've realized that just being a creative that sits at home on my own all the time doesn't work for me. So
Mm,
it's finding a way in the current work landscape where a lot of opportunities for creators are remote to meet people and connect with people. So yeah, finding that connection and finding where I can bring value to others is definitely what makes me happy and seeing that impact in the world. So, yeah.
amazing. So where can people find about a bit more about you?
So you can have a look at my website. So that's studioselfmade.com. And I'm active quite a lot on LinkedIn. So that's Emma Redfern on LinkedIn and also have Studio Selfmade page on there. So any tips for creatives, we've got loads on there. So have a look. But yeah, it'd be great to connect with you guys.
Fantastic. Emma, thank you so much for being here. It was wonderful
Thank
to chat
you.
to you.
Thank you so much.
And to everybody that watched, thanks so much for viewing. Check out the videos on the right hand side and check out more from Right Aligned. See you next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, if you found it useful, like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all the YouTube stuff. If you want more from Right Aligned, on our website you can find studio workshops, design courses, and inspirational stories. We're also now doing in-person events with Process. You can find out all about that on Eventbrite. And of course, you can follow us on LinkedIn and on Instagram /Right Aligned Academy. See you on the next one.